Well, in 1993, my friend Paul Boucher, who's a musician, bought a house in an area of France called the Vivarais, which is a very high mountainous area, 3,000 feet high, and very unspoilt because of the lack of access, really. And he started a music festival, and he came to me and said, would I do an exhibition to launch the festival? And I said, you bet. Well, we arrived, my partner Patrick and I think I might have felt very anxious and worried, because I suddenly thought, what am I going to do here? Because the peasant is a very hackneyed subject which has been tackled by so many people. And I thought, how can I possibly do something new and significant? In London, I had been working for Vogue magazine, doing a series of pictures of food, and one of the famous pictures was of Patrick's hands holding an onion. And we thought that this would be a good start to the series, is to have the hands holding the things they'd made. And the things they make are particularly excellent. For example, the saucisson they make is sold in Paris, and they take every possible care in making it. It's always the best possible quality, and they're really proud of it, and they hold it like you would hold an art piece. In fact, in my opinion, sometimes their work is as good as any modern art piece, if not better. And centuries of expertise has gone into this. So we started out asking them to sit on the chair. I found an old background, a bit of old concrete behind the hotel they sat in front of, and I just photographed their hands. And I would show them the Polaroids, because I was using this old camera with a Polaroid back, and they were outraged that I had cut their heads off. After a very short while, I realized I had to do their heads as well. In the end, I had a whole series of portraits of them, and they were wonderful, the portraits, and they're very good looking, actually, very distinguished looking, with fine noses and rather a sort of square jaw, and very nice wide set blue eyes they have. Mark Charles was one of the farmers that we got to know really well. She lived on her own up a long track, up a mountain just outside Le Mas, which you had to walk up. There was no other way up there. And at that time I was using a large plate camera and Polaroid film, which had to be fixed instantly once you had taken the pictures. And so luckily I always had an assistant with me, and sometimes even my friends. And so between us we lugged all this stuff up the mountain. And she was very intrigued by the process of taking a picture, because I had to disappear under the dark cloth, take my Polaroid, develop it. When I got my plastic bucket out, she was even more intrigued, because it was exactly the same as her own plastic bucket that she made her cheese in. So we felt like kindred spirits. In fact, we felt we were both like alchemists, making something out of nothing, really. She became a real friend. We went up the mountain with the goats, and they loved eating the wild chestnuts. They grow chestnuts as a crop up there, sweet chestnuts. And it was a beautiful evening one night, and she turned back towards me and said, "Such a nice evening, don't come in now, go down the stream, round the bottom and come up the other side." And I said, "Oh, all right." She said, "No, not you, I'm talking to the goats." She had this relationship with the goats, which was completely human. She talked to them and they did what she told her. They're so intelligent, goats, you know. And one day, there was this terribly pretty little white goat, and I was being very sentimental and saying, "Oh, so adorable, so pretty." And she said, "Well, enjoy her while you can." She said, "I'm going to eat her next week. She's no good to me." So I thought that demonstrated quite well their totally unsentimental attitude to animals. They have a very good quality of life. They're beautifully taken care of. They're friends with them. But when the time comes, they know that it's fine just to end it all and turn it into something else, which is a meal. They seem to be able to make that jump between an animal that's a friend and your lunch, which we actually aren't very good at, I think.
I've known Tessa for a long time, since about 1989, and we worked on lots of projects together. But it was only in the year 2004 that she asked me to join her documentary project in the Ardèche, the Vivarais. By then I'd been working at the V&A as a curator of photographs for about 100 years, or so it sometimes seemed. And this was the first time I'd actually worked closely with a photographer at the coalface, as Tessa once put it, and it was a fantastic experience. One of the things that is so special about this project is it's really long-term, a 15-year project. And one of the many great photographers I worked with was Henri Cartier-Bresson, the great French master. And Henri once said very memorably that you have to milk the cow a long time to get a little butter. And Tessa's project makes most other documentary projects seem incredibly superficial. And one of the other beefs I have about the photography of peasants in the 20th century is that some of these photographers make the peasants look completely passive. You know, they're shown sitting in their farmhouses like doomed species. And Tessa shows them working, active, resourceful. And her work connects very well, I think, with progressive ideas about farming. For example, the British writer John Berger lives about 150 miles north of the Vivarais. And his book, Pig Earth, was seminal for many photographers when it came out in 1979 and had a big impact on British photographers, including Tessa. Berger's work is all about the fact that peasants have a view of the earth which is different from that of the capitalist society that they struggle with. You know, they are interested in sustainable living. And it's very interesting to me that this connects with very progressive thinking by bodies like the Land Institute in Kansas. Their credo is all about working with the grain of the land, not fighting the land, but finding systems of agriculture that work with natural systems. So, in fact, the peasants, which seem to represent the past, have a lot to contribute to the future.
Well, Mark, do you remember I was really surprised because we were planning to go in 2004 and I prepared this folder for you with all my notes and my thoughts and the portraits of all the people we'd photographed. And you, I gave it to you as a sort of help for your project, and you were quite taken with it, I think.
Yes, it was terrific because you did interviews, in-depth interviews with your subjects, and you had somebody to translate the dialect for you, didn't you?
Yes, Jan London, who's actually Australian, had lived there for 30 years, could understand the dialect, which is quite tough actually, and turn it back into English, but she did it in a very good way so that it kept this gritty, earthy feel to it. They have quite a limited vocabulary, but it's very expressive.
Yeah. I'd like to think I brought something to this project that might not have been done if I had not been involved, and I don't want to seem boastful, Tessa, but I think I was the person who realised that these texts were so good that they had to be part of the book, which they are.
Yes, well, I'm delighted, and actually subsequently people have said to me who've got the book that they look at it a lot because they can look at the pictures and then find out what they're all about. Whereas some photography books where you don't know what the picture's about, you may even only look at them once or twice. They don't draw you back because there's nothing to tell.
So one of the other highlights was visiting the horse fair.
Yes.
Which is held every year on exactly the same day.
October the 20th, yes.
October the 20th, and has been going for 400, 500 years.
Yes, it's amazing.
High up in the mountains.
Yes. Well, It's a very interesting subject, I think, and also in terms of modern life, because horses are definitely coming back in Europe as for many different reasons. One of which is transport, because all these little villages have to think about their carbon emissions, and they've discovered that having a horse to collect the garbage and to take the children to school, a horse and cart, is a very good way of getting rid of your carbon emissions, because the horse only costs £1,000, whereas a lorry costs £15,000. It doesn't use any petrol. It gives you manure for your garden. And if you buy a female horse, she renews herself every few years, which is more than a lorry can ever do. So at this horse fair, they sell them for that reason. But equally, they farm horses as a crop. You know, they farm them to eat. And they've always done it. And for the hill farms, it's a very, very good resource, because the high fields up in the mountains can't be used for much else. And it helps their income, these tiny little farms. And it's helped the survival of the heavy horse. There are 9 different heavy horses in France now who are flourishing, which wouldn't do otherwise.
These are very beautiful golden
Yes,
horses, aren't they?
We find it heartbreaking because, of course, we have this taboo about eating horse meat, which is a very Anglo-Saxon thing. I mean, nobody knows really where it comes from, but some people say we used to worship the horse. You know, we have white horses all over our hillsides, carved into the chalk. But we've exported this taboo to all the Anglo-Saxon, English-speaking countries like America. Americans don't eat horse meat, nor do the Canadians, nor do the Australians.
But they do eat it unwittingly when they go to France and have steak tartare, don't they? Because that is generally horse meat, isn't it?
It is. It's much
and
more...
very good it is too. We had to be there very early, didn't we? And they start serving pot au feu at, 6 in the morning?
Yes.
And it's delicious, and it's fast food that they keep going all day long, and it comes to your plate within seconds of you sitting down.
It's the most marvellous
with
experience.
bread and wine and so on, and it's fast food that is good for you. The other thing I'd like to lay claim to, because John Burgess started Pig Earth with an extraordinary description of the killing of a cow, I wanted to go to see the killing of a pig in January, when they do this, the cold part of the year, when no flies are around, in order to write my introduction. And you, who know much more about what killing pigs involves, were a bit squeamish. But because I was going, you said, OK, well, I'll come too. We went in this January, when we were summoned, weren't we? They said the pig killing is going to be next weekend.
Yes.
So off we went on the train.
Yes.
And it is the high point of the book and the exhibition, I think, in a way.
Yes, I think it's an incredibly important moment. And if we hadn't gone, actually we were very lucky too, because it was deep January, freezing cold weather. And during the killing that day, when the pig was killed, it started to snow. And in fact, it snowed really heavily all through the night. And we got amazing landscape pictures of the country in the snow, which we would never have got otherwise. The
strange thing is that although it is so high up and remote, the snow has been absent for quite a few years.
Yes, it has, which is a mystery. You know, this whole thing of the difference between climate change and weather is very confusing. But anyway, they did have a very hard winter that winter, and we did get it, which was wonderful for our book. One of my feelings is